Once when I was a kid, I got into a can of condensed milk that my mom left open in the fridge. Now, I had never tried this stuff before, and I was delighted to find out that it is goddamn delicious. And I ate the whole thing. That's the day I found out, yes, you can have too much of a good thing. Is that what we're going through right now with the retro gaming craze? Maybe. Though this is not exactly a new thing, this year we saw a lot of remakes and remasters. Just off the top of my head, we had that were either released this year or announced this year. StarCraft Remaster, Warcraft 3, Command & Conquer, we just covered that the other day. What else? Pokemon Let's Go, Eevee and Pikachu are essentially remakes of Pokemon Yellow. We had remakes of Spyro, Crash, Shadow of the Colossus, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Shadow of the Colossus is, I think to this day, the only game that I bought that I set down and I pretty much didn't get up until I beat it. Granted, it wasn't the longest game in the world, but it was amazing. And then we have the plug-and-play consoles, and I have to always preface this with, I know that AtGames or AtGames, I'm not sure what the company is called, they came up with that first. Yes, we all know Nintendo didn't come up with the idea, but they did bring more public, more mainstream awareness to the idea of buying this little console that you plug into your TV and then you can play all the classic games from your childhood. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation of plug-and-play consoles before the NES Classic is that that's like a kitschy, like, impulse buy. When you're checking out at Best Buy, they would keep them by the counter. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like it wasn't a thing that people rushed to stores to buy. Then you had the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, now the PlayStation Classic is coming out as well. All things old are new again. Now, is this a good or a bad thing? Or too much of a good thing, which then becomes a bad thing. Now, nobody can say gamers don't want this. I think it goes without saying that the NES, the SNES, the PS1 Classic, all of these were hits. Perhaps not so much the PS1, but not because there was no consumer interest in a plug-and-play console by Sony. It's because they put the bare minimum effort, and the library isn't that great. But yeah, mostly gamers are down with this. Both these little consoles, these remasters that we're getting so many of right now, and it makes a lot of sense. We were kids then, we are adults now, we can afford all the nice things that we promised ourselves we would spoil ourselves with. Remember that? Remember being 12 and thinking, man, one day I'm gonna be old enough to have my own credit card and I could drive myself to the store and buy all the games I want, and I'm gonna have pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, I probably shouldn't do that last part. Yeah, I pretty much lived the life that I thought I would live when I was a kid. I get paid to play and talk about video games, and I can play virtually any game I want. It's pretty awesome. It makes sense why these companies are catering to us. We were kids then, now we hold the credit card. Why? Yo, Bob is always, look at this, I don't think you can see it. Bob Wolf is always streaming when I'm recording my thing. Bob, stop streaming when I'm busy.
Hi, Izzy.
Bob! Kick his ass! He's streaming Heart Gold right now. That's another remake right there! Now, one has to wonder, when is it too much? Will remake, remaster, plug-and-play console fatigue eventually set in? I think it's pretty good right now. We are at the stage in the industry where news of a new game being remastered or remade, it's usually met with a lot of optimism. At the most, people get upset when they don't trust the companies behind it. But the idea of bringing these old games back is always welcome. I think it may wear out its welcome if one of two things happen. One, these remakes are not so good. If they're made to be basically soulless cash grabs. They got our nostalgia in a vice grip. They know they have our money. All they have to do is put it out and we're going to rush to buy it. And that it's very conducive. That is fertile ground for laziness. If they know we're gonna buy it anyway, why put in the effort? So far, so good. Most of these remakes, people are either very excited for them, you know, companies with bad practices being in charge of these remakes notwithstanding. In fact, people right now are more likely to be upset that a game is not being remade. Diablo 2! And down the wrong pipe there. Than they are to get upset that another game is being remade. Again, this will change if it becomes a gold rush. if they just start putting these games out with no regard to quality. And the gaming industry being what it is, we're probably overdue for that. So I hate to be pessimistic. I feel like my last couple of videos have been kind of pessimistic. And two, if companies don't wait long enough to remake these games. Now, that is already starting to happen. As I'm sure you know, Ubisoft announced they're remastering Assassin's Creed 3 because I guess there aren't enough Assassin's Creed games out there. How many of these games are there even? Let me see here. Oh, it's 1 billion. Okay, I guess we needed a new one. Why not? Assassin's Creed 3 came out in 2012. That's 6 years ago. That's pretty soon to be remastering a game. Again, not being a fan of Assassin's Creed, I might be talking out my butt here. Maybe the Assassin's Creed fans, if there are even any left, probably really want Assassin's Creed 3 to be remastered. I don't know. To me, that's a little too recent. To me, that's like when Sony rebooted Spider-Man only like 5 years after the last one in 2007, and we all know what happened then. And yes, of course, the situation was different in that case. It could be argued that Sony had a much more pressing need to reboot the franchise because otherwise the rights to the character would revert back to Marvel. So some might say, you know what, they had to do it, otherwise they'd lose the thing they spent so much money on. But still, my point is, if these companies start being a little... if they're not waiting long enough to remake these games, people might think that, what's the point here? But what do you think? As an old school gamer, do you appreciate these old titles being around again? Do you think it's awesome that younger people can experience them like we did when they first came out? Or do you think that this is really just a nostalgia cash grab? Let me know how you feel in the comments down below. As always, let me know where you're from. I'm always very curious to hear where you guys are watching these videos from. Follow me on social media, Twitter or Instagram. I'm very active on both. Speaking of Twitter, I want to thank Tasty Snackies for giving me the idea for this video. I love getting feedback from you guys. I love hearing suggestions for things that I should cover here, so don't be shy. Let me know, what do you want me to cover here? I will talk about that thing. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy and I'm done.